Hi guys, this is the Casual Fan. Now the Max Verstappen defiance of team orders in Brazil and his indignant response to Red Bull on the team radio, it has left many people surprised. The Red Bull driver openly defied his team's order to swap positions with Sergio Perez on the last lap of the race. Why? Because according to Max Verstappen, he had his reasons. This move has left quite a few sections of fans shocked, especially because of the kind of relationship that both Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen have shown in the last 2 years. Perez, on his part, valiantly put up a defensive front against Hamilton in Abu Dhabi last season, and this had even prompted Verstappen to call his teammate a legend during that race. Both Perez and Verstappen have worked as a team. Now, when you consider all of that, why did Max Verstappen do something like this is a very interesting question. Now, if you are honest, it's safe to say that the answer to why Max Verstappen did something like this is not known. And other than speculation, there will not be any official statement on this from either of the drivers or the team. Now, there have been rumors and suggestions from Dutch journalists that this disgruntlement dates back to what happened in Monaco earlier this season. According to them, Perez crashed intentionally during qualifying in Monaco, and this was something that helped him gain the upper hand and win the race. Verstappen at that point finished in P3, and if we all remember, he was still in a very tense title fight at that moment. Now, the veracity of the claims is up to any individual's interpretation, and unless something is officially verified, I'll be honest, it's a waste of time to speculate on this. Because, let's be fair, if someone wants to believe that Perez did that intentionally, there is evidence to prove that. On the other hand, if someone wants to believe that there was nothing of this sort, there is evidence to prove that as well. So let's put that on the back burner, and I don't think it's worth speculating. Now, coming back to what Verstappen did in Brazil, there is a reason why there has been such an outrage. One of the primary reasons has been, well, for the lack of a better word, a rather perfect season that Verstappen has put together this year. In terms of on-track mistakes, there have been very few and far between. In terms of wins, he has broken the record for most wins in a season. And in terms of championship, that is sealed as well. The Dutch driver has executed everything so well this season that it almost creates an aura that he cannot do anything wrong. Well, when it comes to the on-track stuff, it might be true. But when we talk about the other key aspects that an F1 driver needs to master over time, Verstappen's actions were a stark reminder that the reigning F1 world champion is still just 25 years old. I think it's safe to say that first we need to talk about Verstappen's actions in the Brazilian Grand Prix. Well, if I'm brutally honest, Verstappen's actions in Brazil will go down as one of the more significant moments of self-sabotage in Formula 1. Let's start things by giving Verstappen the benefit of doubt and assume that Sergio Perez intentionally crashed in Monaco. Even if that is the case, why wait for 6 months to react like this? More importantly, why do it publicly? Why not use your well-earned clout in Red Bull to get this thing discussed and resolved behind closed doors? When we talk about Verstappen's championship triumphs in the last 2 years, Perez might not have made a major contribution, but he certainly has had a role to play. Perez defended valiantly against Hamilton in Turkey and Abu Dhabi last season, and those points lost by Hamilton and gained by Verstappen were crucial in the title battle. The two drivers, at least on the surface, they've enjoyed a very harmonious relationship. Perez has gone out of his way to help Verstappen this season as well. And more importantly, in 2023, when Mercedes could possibly be a factor in the title battle, Perez could have proved to be the trump card. Unfortunately, with the way Max Verstappen has gone about things, he might have turned his biggest ally on the grid against him. All in all, if I have to give a verdict, Verstappen could have handled this better, and it will come back to bite him in the future. Now, the answer to this lies in studying the careers of some of the more accomplished drivers in the history of the sport. Ideally, all Max needs to do is take a look at his biggest enemy of the grid, Lewis Hamilton. For every upcoming driver on the grid, the way Hamilton farmed his relationship with Bottas is a true example of how a lead driver should be with the support cast within the team. Now let's be fair, in a championship winning team, everyone knows who's the number 1 and number 2 driver. Everyone knows that for the betterment of the result of the lead driver, the number 2 driver might have to compromise his race a bit from time to time. There are two ways of doing that. The first involves both drivers having a respectful relationship amongst themselves so that the number 2 driver is willing to do that role. The second situation involves where the number 2 driver is doing things a bit begrudgingly. Now, when I talk about a driver begrudgingly helping his teammate, there aren't many that match in description as well as Mark Webber did with Sebastian Vettel during their partnership. That was a relationship that was close to breaking point almost every season. On the other hand, Lewis Hamilton was able to develop a strong bond with Valtteri Bottas during their Mercedes partnership. Fernando Alonso did that with Felipe Massa, and before them, if we dig into the past, Ayrton Senna did that with Gerhard Berger. Let's be fair, the extent to which Perez went to defend against Hamilton in Abu Dhabi and Turkey, it was admirable. That is something that we have never even seen from Valtteri Bottas, and that is something what the ideal number 2 driver in the team should be. The Mexican played that role to perfection and did all that was possible to help Max Verstappen. After all that Max has done in Brazil, will Perez do the same if the situation demands next season? Arguably not. He will not go the extra mile. This is where Max needs to understand that there were better ways to resolve whatever Perez has done in Monaco. Talking about impact, short term there won't be any because Max has already sealed the title. Long term repercussions are surely going to be there unless Max is able to mend his relationship with Perez at Abu Dhabi. Now, there has been a level of shock and confusion over what Max Verstappen did in Brazil, and it is there from the fans and F1 pundits alike. Now, as I mentioned earlier, what he has done is going to come back and bite him in the future. Having said that, maybe for once, we need to sit back and ask ourselves, should we have expected anything different from Max? We tend to compare whatever Max does on the track and off it with legends of the sport. The mistake that we make while doing that is we compare what Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso or Sebastian Vettel did in the entirety of their careers with what Max Verstappen is doing when he's only 25. As a driver, what Max Verstappen is doing at this age is almost unprecedented. Verstappen is the best driver on the grid that has 3 other multiple world champions with 13 championships amongst them. He has reached the level of maturity in driving that we do not tend to see with drivers of his age. There's almost this inherent expectation that this level of maturity that he shows as a driver will translate into what he is as a 25-year-old kid. The reality of the situation is that this does not happen. Max Verstappen is essentially doing what any 25-year-old kid would be doing, and that is making stupid mistakes, being impulsive, and burning bridges that he does not need to. The 3 Formula 1 legends on the current grid have put together impressive careers. But what were they doing when they were younger? Well, Fernando Alonso, on his part, when he was 25 years old, he was blaming Renault for sabotaging his championship campaign in 2006 against Michael Schumacher. In 2007, when he was 26, he fell out with McLaren, the fastest car on the grid, and went back to Renault, a car that was midfield at best. Lewis Hamilton, on his part, as a 24-year-old, was caught lying to the stewards in 2009. As a 27-year-old in 2012, he shared the team's confidential telemetry data on social media. He also had a public fallout with Jenson Button when he wrongly accused Button of unfollowing him on social media. These were the things that Hamilton did when he was 27-year-old. Now moving to Sebastian Vettel, well, on his part he also had a public fallout with Mark Webber after the 2 drivers crashed into each other in 2010. Vettel was 23 at the time, and of course, who can forget the infamous Multi-21 fiasco when Vettel was 26 years of age in 2013. The thing is, we tend to judge any Formula 1 legend's career with what they have done in the entirety. However, at the same time, it's safe to say that every driver does these foolish things when they are younger. Looking back, will either of Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Vettel be proud of some of the things which they did when they were around 25? Not really. This is the growing up process that every driver goes through in his career, and Max Verstappen is doing that right now. Fast forward 5 years, will Max Verstappen look back at what he did in Brazil and be proud of it? Probably not, but that's just the part of growing up. Everyone does dumb things when they are young, and irrespective of the fact that Verstappen has made his way into many of the F1 record books, he is still a 25-year-old kid that has a lot of growing up left to do. What he did in Brazil was dumb, and he will face the repercussions. But that is just something what you expect from a 25-year-old. He will mature, he will become better, but what he did, was it too much of a surprise for me? Not really. It was expected. So these are my views. What do you guys think? Do let me know in the comment section. Thanks for watching and see you next time.